Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service here in Hernando County. And joining me today is one of our Master Gardener volunteers, Bernie. Good morning, Bernie. How are you?
Good morning, Bill. And I see Colby's decided to join
I'm
us.
having audio issues. I'm sorry.
I think we're all having issues today.
I can't hear
Also here
anything.
with us is our Hernando County Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator, Colby. And if you hear a little noise in the background, it's because in Bernie's office, they're replacing a ballast with one of the lights. So today, everybody has a problem except for me. It's quiet in my office and actually not freezing cold. The heat's going. So as always, guys, if you have any lawn or garden or tree or bush or turf grass or whatever kind of questions you might have, please feel free to go ahead and ask them. And we will try to overcome our technical difficulties and reconstruction and everything and get them answered for you. Buddy, good morning. I'm sure it's a lot colder up there in the Panhandle than it is here. So, although my computer says it's 61 now. That's nice. A little chilly.
Yeah, it was 42 at the house this morning.
Better than 32.
It was cold enough that I didn't want to get out of bed this morning. This bar's pretty low because I'm from Florida.
Yeah, it must have been less than 78 and it's just a bedroom. The sad part about it is, looks like we're going to have cold weather a little earlier than normal, and hopefully we won't have any of those actual freezing or frost until after Christmas. But generally that week between Christmas and New Year's, something bad happens. And if you've got a lot of plants that need to be protected, you may wish that you had blankets or freeze cloths or whatever. So if we're going to get a frost in the next week or so, you want to really be sure that you're in a position to take care of your plants. People in the northern part of the state, that's pretty common. But where we are, people move in all the time, don't understand what happens. They've got all these plants that they bought at the big box store, and most of them aren't going to survive. If we get a frost, it's going to kill half of them, and if we get down into the high 20s, it's going to kill the rest of them. So
it can happen.
Be prepared.
Yep, make plans now, and remember, you live in Florida now, but it depends on where in Florida you live. Hernando County is not Miami. If you live in Miami, you really don't have to worry about freezes and frosts. Hernando County, it does freeze, and we do get frosts. And then obviously up in the Panhandle, they always get freezes and they always get frosts every winter. And it's just a part of their environment.
Well, they just redid the districts this year and moved us from 9A to 9B. And that's probably true for the average, because those districts are based on the average minimum temperature. And unfortunately, every 5 years, we really exceed the average someplace along the line. And every 25, 30 years, we end up being 8B. So you're sitting there, everything has been fine. You've got plants that have really grown up big that maybe shouldn't be here, but they've survived. And after 20 years, you just are never expecting what's really going to happen. And it's, law averages are that if you have plants that shouldn't be here, sometime every 25 years, you're going to find out why. And that's what happened. We moved to Florida. We bought a old orange grove because I thought the orange grove was just magnificent. And we came down right after New Year's in 89, when the 80s had all those big freezes, and woke up in the morning and looked out at our beautiful orange grove, and it was total brown. We lost every tree on the property. So those things happen. And yet there had been orange groves for 30 years with no problem. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Well, you can look back in the history books, the history of Florida and citrus, and they used to grow citrus commercially as far north as just shy of Gainesville. And people would come down here. There was a lot in DeBerry. Mr. DeBerry, DeBerry's a town in Volusia County, grew citrus along the shores of the St. Johns River. So they were able to pick them, put them on a boat, send them to Jacksonville, put them on a train to New York. People would make millions. They become very, very wealthy. Every 20, 30, 40 years, boom, you have a really, really bad winter. And they don't grow citrus commercially as far north as Gainesville anymore. They barely do as far north as Orlando. Most of it is further south of Orlando because it may do great for 5, 10, 20 years. But one day, that really bad cold front's going to come through and just blow out all the averages and, destroy your citrus, maybe damage your lawn, which we haven't seen in a number of years here. Maybe damage a lot of plants in your yard. And you're wondering, well, I planted it 3 years ago and it's done great. Why did it die this winter? Just one of those winters, got unusually cold.
One of the things that I think is crazy is you go back and look at the pictures of Claremont, Mineola, that area from decades and decades ago, and from then to now on what it looks like, because now it's rolling hills, beautiful houses everywhere. But back then it was rolling hills and it was just all orange groves. And not in my lifetime, it hasn't been like that. But looking at those old, like there's black and white pictures of there, and it's orange trees as far as the eye can see, like where the turnpike is now, just all of it. And that's pretty crazy to think about.
Well, you have to remember that we had basically 100% freeze out of citrus in 89, in 85, and 83. So if you were a citrus farmer in 83, you get a hit, you don't expect it to happen again, you replant, you lose the entire crop again in 85, and a lot of people didn't replant, but those that did got wiped out again in 89. And the farmers make a lot of money sometimes and a little bit of money sometimes, and they lose money. And if you're a farmer, you expect that. But if you lose money 3 or 4 times in one 10-year period, the economics aren't there to continue. And generally, you owe a lot of money to the bank, and the bank says you're going to have to pay this back. And the quickest way to pay it back is turn it into houses. So citrus has moved. There's some 25,000 acre farms that went in south of Interstate 4. Some of the really big people like Minute Maid, PepsiCo, those people put in really big investment in citrus. And then we had citrus greening. Well, if we don't recover from citrus greening, if we don't come up with a new plant, citrus in Florida is over. Right now, citrus is not a viable crop, and it's really sad.
Well, Bernie, speaking of citrus, Angie Day wants to know, I guess, what's the best way to protect a lime tree?
Lime trees, they're touchy. Lime trees, depends on the tree. 30 degrees generally zaps a lime tree. 25 degrees will take out most lime trees. If you're in an area where the temperature hits 25 degrees routinely, like we are, every 3-4 years we get 25 degrees. Lime trees don't tend to survive. And that's one of those things where there's exceptions to the rule. There are a handful of 30-year-old lime trees in Hernando County, but there are not many of them. And there again, there's nothing you can do to extend the temperature ratings of lime trees. But lime trees are unusual in that they're normally planted on their own rootstock. Most citrus doesn't like being on its own rootstock. There's nematodes that affect it, and consequently, we use a nematode-resistant rootstock and put a sweet orange on top of it. Or if you want easier to pick, you use a rootstock that helps dwarf the trees so they're easier to pick, or something like that. But lime tree is on its own rootstock normally, and if it gets frozen, it usually will come back. So if you get one of those 20 degrees for 3 days, you may not have it come back. But otherwise, all you do with lime is you don't plant them if you're farther north than about halfway between us and Ocala. You shouldn't probably plant them here expecting long life. And same thing with true lemons. True lemons, they go pretty quick. They're about a 24, 25 degree maximum temperature drop. So plant a Meyer lemon, it'll take a colder temperature. Don't plant lime trees unless you realize that there's a possibility that you will lose it. And as far as a spray for a lime tree, the truth is citrus is probably the easiest plant going to maintain. You only need one kind of spray, and that's a copper fungicide. That pretty well covers 99% of the things that the tree's going to get. You can spray it a couple of times, once in the spring, once early summer with a copper-based fungicide. That's all the care that the tree needs. Fertilize it 3-4 times a year following the fertilizer recommendation. And if you see a problem, you can't correct it, and the tree will either get better or it'll croak no matter what you do. So it makes it a
Just get a hold of Bernie
plant
with your problems. He'll help you figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, makes it a wonderful
Positive outlook
with a
there.
brown thumb.
Yeah.
Now, if the tree's a little bitty tree, you probably would want to spray for insects if you've got an insect problem. If the tree's 10 foot tall, you're probably not going to be able to do anything, and it's probably not going to hurt anything.
Okay, let me go through some of the comments and questions here. Bassem asked about the best way to protect Cuban oregano during the cold weather. I have mine growing in a large container, so when we're going to get a freeze or frost, I'm able to pick it up and bring it into the garage and take care of it. If you have them in the ground, they are a fairly tropical herb, so they will get a lot of freeze damage and they will probably die. A lot of times they come back from the roots. And Corey says that he had one growing as a houseplant in a window for 5 years. So you can grow them indoors also. You can always try saving cuttings to kind of hedge your bets. If I lose the plant that's growing outside, I have some cuttings so I can, keep it going or get it going again in the spring. And Diana, good morning. And we have some more happy emojis here. All those cake emojis are making me hungry now. So
This is a bad time to be on a diet. I just went on a diet, and I'm doing pretty well. So hopefully, I only got Christmas Day to worry about, and then after that, I'll back to being all right again.
Yeah, you don't want to go too overboard with the holidays coming up. So Corey has a couple tangerine type trees and a couple sour oranges growing under or on the edge of some live oaks that are about 20 years old. Growing citrus in the shade of large trees, the citrus grows slower and it's probably not going to flower and fruit as much if it is flowering and fruiting, but the tree canopy can help to hold in a little extra heat to help them out on a really cold night. So pluses and minuses.
Well, that and the fact that the tangerine and sour orange are both two of the most tolerant cold citrus. So they'll take down into the teens generally. So You need one
When
of those
I
really, really bad days to worry about them.
when I lived in Webster, we had a couple grapefruit trees, a couple tangerine trees, and a sour orange tree that grew under live oak canopies. And when it was time for oranges or time for us to have fruit, they were always there. Um, and I feel like that. I mean, and they had to have been there. These were 15 or 20 foot tall trees. They had to have been there for quite some time. So I wonder how. Like it seems like it's a pretty good idea. Most of the people who have orange trees growing over there are under these massive live oaks. I wonder. I don't know enough about citrus trees to know if that's like a great idea, but it seems to me like most people who had orange trees over there or citrus trees over there had them growing under big oak trees.
Talking to one of the local foresters, and he said that it's becoming a problem in the forest that citrus is now an invasive plant uh, in a lot of places. The thing that happens is those seeds are viable. So
Hmm.
you get something that moves an orange and it sits in the right spot with the right conditions, and you got an orange tree that pops up. And that tree will produce some more oranges. And some of the varieties, especially the sour orange, are really able to be fairly mobile. So uh,
Hmm.
that a lot of times they aren't under the orange tree or under the oak tree because they were intentionally planted there. A lot of times they were nature planted there. And I hate to tell you what the biggest animal is for moving the seeds.
Yeah, we do a fantastic job of moving stuff around. Bassem asks, what's the best way to deal with leaf miners on your citrus trees?
You
There
don't.
is a product on the market called Spinosad. You should be able to find that at your local big box stores now or online. And that works very, very well on leaf miners because it actually goes into the leaf where the leaf miners are hiding. Although leaf miners are normal on citrus, if you only have a few leaves affected, you can, live with it or ignore it. If you have a lot of leaf miners, you're probably going to want to spray with spinosad, and that'll knock them right out.
Yeah, don't take the leaves off. Even though they've got tunnels in them, the rest of the leaf is still producing carbohydrates. So the chlorophyll in the rest of it is acting.
So should Diana bring her potted avocado plants inside for the winter, or is leaving them on a screened-in porch enough protection?
If it's forecast to be below 30 degrees, the avocados absolutely need protection. If it's sitting in a screen porch, frost isn't going to be a problem, but cold temperature will be a problem. So if it's forecast to be below 30 degrees, I would definitely put them inside. As long as it's above 32 degrees, uh, it's not going to kill the plants. They are tolerant, uh, but that little transition area between 30 and 32 degrees uh, is really abrupt on avocado plants. They have a tendency to stick their feet in the air really easy. So
Yeah, and if they get too cold, they're going to get cold damage. They're going to lose leaves. And then you spend half of your summer having the tree recover from that. And your tree never moves further down the road towards flowering, towards giving you avocados, spending all of its time and energy just trying to recover from the previous winter's damage.
one thing about avocado trees, they tend to really want full sun. So if you plant one next to a tree to give it a little shade, they tend to start growing sideways to get away from the afternoon shading or the morning shading. And it's kind of a weird effect. But avocado tree is either a full sun tree or if you've got it on a porch, uh, it doesn't want half day bright sun. It would be happier with all day diffused lighting, pretty much the same. rather than one bright half, one dark half. The plants do funny things.
So we have a question here from Andrew Dave about, she has a large bougainvillea and it has purple and dark colors. Any propagation tips for cuttings of different colors on the same bougainvillea bushes? Sounds like she wants to try grafting. Can you graft bougainvilleas?
I don't know. Never tried.
I've never tried either.
I would think that would probably work. I think she should try it and let us know.
I think it'd make for a fun experiment. As long as they're both bougainvilleas, they're going to be compatible. And I really couldn't tell you off the top of my head what type of graft to use with the bougainvillea, because there are different types of grafts. And some are probably better for citrus and some are better for other trees. Yeah, Teresa, if you're watching, if you want to try looking that up, I've honestly never heard of grafting bougainvilleas. I have heard about, obviously, you could take air layers of bougainvilleas.
Yeah, normally the air layers.
Here is another citrus question for Bernie. Bill has a Meyer lemon tree that's been in the ground for 5 years, made 2 lemons in the second year and none since. It's still only 3 feet tall. Could it be fighting root competition from the nearby viburnum?
Probably not, but it depends. Do you know anything about the tree? Is it a grafted tree meant to be planted in the area that you're in? You know, that's one of those things. If you plant a citrus tree from southern Florida in Hernando County, for instance, it's going to be on the wrong rootstock. And if the Meyer lemon is on its own rootstock and wasn't a grafted plant, one, it's going to probably have a nematode problem, and second, it's still a baby. The citrus plants usually are around 7 to 8 years to get out of the infant stage and start doing anything. So I really wouldn't worry about it yet. It's important that you feed it and that you give it citrus fertilizer. Doesn't need a lot, but it needs some, and it needs it. I'd say 4 times a year on a plant that size. Don't fertilize it after October. So as soon as it gets warm in your area, wherever you are, and it's reasonable expectation for it to be warm and the tree to start growing, start fertilizing and plan on fertilizing 4 times up into October, and see what that does. I would say there's probably nothing else you could do to affect it, but I wouldn't really worry about it too much if you don't know anything about the plant. And if you bought the plant out of your area, you didn't buy it from a local nursery, or if you bought it from a big box store, it may take it a long time to start doing something. The other thing is, when you planted it, the planting depth is super critical on citrus. 2 inches off of the depth that it was in the original planting will probably kill the tree in about 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. It takes time.
It takes a while. So make sure that you put citrus in so that the level is exactly the same as it is in the pot, and bought it in a big box store. Here's the problem with big box store plants like that. Citrus needs to be for the area you're in. Northern Florida, Central Florida, Mid-Central Florida, South Florida, extreme South Florida take different rootstocks. They take a different plant. They need something that's accumulated. What a big box store does is they buy 5 million citrus trees. 1 million go to South Florida, 1 million go to the next group up, 1 million go here, 1 million go up in the Gainesville area, and 1 million go up in the Panhandle. The people that happen to live where those trees were specifically designed for have a great happy tree. The people that live farther away from those areas have trees that are slow developing or maybe can't tolerate certain conditions. If it's not a nematode resistant plant and you're a high nematode level area, it's never going to get big. It's never going to do anything because the roots will be attacked. And citrus is one that really gets attacked easy. So that was one of the first things they had to overcome was the nematode problem. So, but I would say since it's in the ground and it is a citrus thing, it's either going to get better or it's going to die. And at this point, there's very little you can do to alter the outcome. If you planted it at the wrong height, you planted it low, so you had a nice depression where you could water or something like that, almost would be worthwhile to dig it up and replant it. But other than that, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do.
Yeah, just continue good care, even watering, fertilizing with a quality citrus tree fertilizer. It's really about the best you can do.
And remember, young citrus is juvenile for about 7 to 9 years.
Looks like Anne-Marie lost some oranges between the frost and a hurricane. Grapefruit, didn't have any, had hundreds of them in the past. She said up in North Florida, the persimmons did fantastic. Sansuma did well. Honeybell's not so sweet. A lot of these things is going to vary year by year. And I think you got it right that the weather plays a very, very big impact on it. Obviously, if you have any kind of fruit trees and they have fruit on them and a hurricane comes through, it can blow a lot of the fruit off, which is heartbreaking if that happens.
A lot of the problems with citrus are from greening, and early in the greening problem, people don't recognize what's going on. The thing about it is, take a look at the leaves of the plant, and you'll find leaves that have got yellowing. If the yellowing is symmetrical about the mid vein, you can fold the leaf up and it's got yellow in exactly the same place on both sides of the center, then that's probably a nutritional thing. And every citrus tree always has a little nutritional problem. But if it's got little spots, white spots, yellowish spots, or light green spots, way down the leaf on one side and way up the leaf on the other side, then I suspect that you've got greening problems. And all those things are associated with greening. Fruit drop, twig dieback, low fruit production, and eventually the fruit gets to where it doesn't taste good. And used to be our recommendation was if you had greening, get rid of the plants. It would be a big problem. My recommendation is, since greening is so prevalent, it doesn't make any sense to just immediately get rid of the plant. You're not going to stop the spread of the disease doing that. Fertilize it well and keep the plants going until the fruit isn't good. And when the fruit isn't good, then get rid of the plants. But it's almost certain that if you've got citrus, you will eventually have greening now.
And Mark points out that the first citrus grown in Florida is planted around St. Augustine, which makes sense. It would have come over with the original Spanish settlers in Florida. And I know that if you go out hiking in the woods, a lot of times you'll run across old citrus trees, and they usually look pretty scraggly, but they're just growing wild out in the middle of the forest. You're wondering, like, well, how the heck did it get out here? It may have been a grove 100 years ago and just grown back over and is now a state conservation area or forest, or like Bernie said, the seeds get around, the fruit gets around, animals can move it around, the seeds are viable, they germinate, end up with another citrus tree. So they get around, and unfortunately, we do a lot of the moving around. And going back to the bougainvillea, yes, it was about grafting, and looks like Teresa put a link up from a YouTube video on grafting. Like I said, I'm sure that you can graft bougainvillea. I've never done it before. I've never known anybody who had. So Andrew, be sure to let us know how that turns out. Yeah, we couldn't make a buy without Teresa. We'd be lost.
There was a comment a little bit earlier that I thought it might be a good idea to touch on. It was talking about how do we protect these areas? And it's not really, gardening related, but I do think it's important, and I don't think a lot of people know. How do we protect these green areas from being developed? Florida is actually kind of interesting. So wetlands are protected in a lot of states that have wetlands. In Florida, though, we're kind of unique in the fact that we protect the upland areas as well. If those upland areas can affect any of the water flows, as long as the wetlands that they're protecting are connected to any named body of water. It's a lot of legalese, but for the most part, if it's a wet area here in Florida, it's protected. But that being said, is sometimes, and this is a lot of the case with a lot of the lowland that's around the turnpike, companies can still develop on it. I won't pinpoint anybody out, but there's a couple of very large developers up there that are moving back towards Orlando from north a little bit, and they're coming down and they are building in these wetlands. But Florida has a program, wetland mitigation. So the wetland will be delineated. It'll be assigned some arbitrary value based off their criteria that they come up with, and then the developer can purchase credits at a mitigation bank, or they can mitigate themselves by creating a new wetland that, in theory, provides the same amount of functional ecosystem services, which means that a lot of our natural wetlands do get built over, but they'll purchase these mitigation credits that are applied to what's called a mitigation bank, where it's a big natural area that is just wetland. A lot of them are in. I'm trying to think of where one that I could describe where it is at. I know there's a bunch of them in South Florida, around the small area down south and north of the Everglades. I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of the city is. There's not much there, but there is a mitigation bank there, and we have probably a dozen of them in the state, I'd say, big size ones. And that's the main mode of protecting green areas in Florida. And then the state owns conservation lands. All the water management districts own lots and lots and lots and lots of land that they try to keep natural.
Yeah.
It is for someone who grew up with nothing but cow pastures, seeing a lot of development hurts my soul. It makes me like, man. And it's not really natural Florida anymore in a lot of those places.
Back
in some of the ways that they say they're trying to protect things, or some of the things they do. For example, I read an article the other day that somewhere, maybe Citrus County, I can't remember exactly where, they're going to put in another subdivision, like more of a city than an individual subdivision, and it's going to include the biggest lagoon. So now the thing is, you build basically your new small city, and you have a huge lagoon and lake, and people can go canoeing and kayaking and everything. It's because the piece of ground they bought to build 10,000 homes on sits too low. So what do? We got to build it up some. Well, we're going to need a ton of dirt for that, right? Yeah. Where do you get the dirt from? Dig a big hole, turn it into a big lagoon. So the big lagoon serves a number of different purposes. It's like, we get the dirt so we can build up all the areas where we're going to build the houses, and then we fill it with water, and now it's a lagoon, and we could charge even more for the houses because it's the biggest lagoon in Florida.
Yeah, sounds like a runoff factory to me, but
yeah. And
what do I know?
One of those neighborhoods. I'm not even going to say what part of Florida it's in, and they try to make it sound so environmentally friendly
Yeah.
and great. And I turned around and I looked at the residential streets that already had a number of homes built. All I saw was St. Augustine lawns, and I saw a couple trucks, spray trucks. I'm thinking, this is not environmentally friendly.
Goodness
Long
gracious,
term,
yeah.
it's not sustainable.
And it's there's a lot of those new developments, and I'll point this way and this way, everywhere surrounding. I mean, I'm sure they're in Hernando County as well, but new ones that are being built where yes, this is an ecologically friendly whatever, and it ends up it's this, and that's if you can skirt regulations and whatnot, you're gonna do it. With those mitigation credits, that if they're building anything near any wetland, they are doing this. They are mitigating. The jury's still out from all the research I've done, and there's a couple things that I participated in at the University of Central Florida that they talked about. They're studying the ecosystem services of these human-created wetlands versus natural wetlands, and I think the jury is still out on. I haven't followed up with any of those recently, but I think the jury is still out on if they are actually doing the same amount of, because in theory they are, but doing the same amount of service, like doing the same things for the hydrogeology of the area and whatnot. Because sometimes I think it's like, oh, this created one is actually doing better than a natural one, but other times it's like this created one isn't doing jack squat, So I'd be curious to look that up. I'm gonna have to go back and check on some of that research.
Yeah, and people may look at the new one, and say, well, it's got to be doing more, services for us because it looks better or it's prettier or whatever.
One of the really big problems with what they've been doing, though, is the what they call the green corridor, the ability for animals to move something north to south, is being cut off. When you go in and you take an area that is green and it's right in the middle of the route, and you eliminate that area, there's no way for the animals to get from north to south, and it's been a real problem. And the very best places left to build happen to be that corridor. That's where the flat areas are. That's the easiest to prepare. It's just off from the major population areas. It's ideal, but we lose a lot of things. It becomes a problem in what happens to the bears, what happens to the panthers, what happens to the birds. Does anybody care? Unfortunately, the two sides on this question, that the builders want every last possible piece of property to have a building on it, and the conservation people want every last building in the state destroyed and a tree planted. So, and there's no middle ground, and it's a shame because here's two groups that really need to get together, and for some reason they're just like Republicans and Democrats. The gap is so wide, there's never going to be an agreement. And I keep hearing clicking in here, and I think something is clicking from temperature change. I keep waiting for something.
Hopefully, we're not going to see any smoke coming out of your computer or anything.
Yeah, the window, a ceiling tile or something. It's like a big thing too is you talk about all this development. It's they're not even developing in a way that would be helpful to anybody except for people who have enough money to outright buy a home. It's kind of crazy because these are all single family homes. So this is not any type of dense multifamily housing that we so desperately need here. So you end up with people still that they're building these houses that it's, oh yeah, you might have a square mile of housing here, but there's hardly any people that live in it because everyone has a decent amount of property that's all covered in St. Augustine grass and one family that lives in each one. And it's just so messed up. I see it. Can't we as the public help this? Yes, write your local representatives into every level of your government. That's what I would say.
Get
This is the
involved.
best.
And here in Hernando County, they've been discussing and looking at zoning for tiny homes. And if you've ever watched anything about tiny homes, they can be a very, very good option for a lot of people.
Mhm.
A lot, people who have them love them. You know, we don't all need, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom mansions to live in individually. So there's a lot of options out there. But let's go ahead and knock through some questions,
Yeah.
comments here, because
Thanks
I
for
need
letting
to
me go
wrap
on
it
my
up a
little tangent.
early today. I have a meeting at 11. So
Okay. There was just one on mimosa in the lawn, and I can really speak to that because that's what I did. And how do you do it? I bought 2 plants, put them in the yard. Actually, didn't put them in the yard. Put them next to the building, little office building my wife's got, and those 2 plants became 20, and then the next year they became 80, and then the next year they took up a space about 20 by 20, and eventually it got to where I have mimosa plants, probably covering 100 by 100 feet, and it's in bahia grass, and it works beautiful because during the summer when the bahia is up and really doing well, you don't see the mimosa very much. A few little puff balls, but that's about it. But in the fall, when the bahia starts going down, the mimosa starts showing up really well, and it's a nice green color. The little puff balls are there, and they stay through the fall. They stay green, and the bahia pretty much gets out of the way and says take over mimosa, and then late in the spring, the bahia is up, super looking great again, and the mimosa is in the background. So if you want to do it, spot the plants. Take about 1 plant per 2 or 3 square yard area, and it'll fill in on its own. It's amazing how quick that happens. And if you have St. Augustine, it may not work as well. St. Augustine is a little tighter, and I'm not sure that the mimosa is going to be happy growing in a St. Augustine lawn, but it works fantastic in bahia.
Can't do that with a monoculture, can you?
No.
Can't have the back and forth of during the seasons.
yeah, and we get so many questions about mostly about St. Augustine lawns, and so many people have problems with them, and they spend money and they spend huge amounts of water and add fertilizer and chemicals, and a lot of times it's not like it slam dunk guaranteed to fix the problem. So it's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge, just educating people, trying to explain to them what St. Augustine grass needs to grow, what will make it happy, what makes it unhappy, and then try to make it happier and less unhappy.
And what's the number one mistake that people make with St. Augustine lawns?
They cut it too short. They cut it at the wrong height. And I even have my ruler here. We have rulers that we made up because we tell people your St. Augustine should be cut 4 inches high. And what does everybody tell you that they cut it at, Bernie?
They cut it at 4 inches, but when you take a ruler, surprise, surprise, what does it measure?
2.5.
2.5 usually. So
I find right at 2, yeah.
So we have rulers, and we even marked, here's 0, here's 1, here's 2. This is where 4 inches is. So your grass should be about this tall, the blades. And somebody brings a sample in, we start looking at it, and it looks like they've been cutting it about this high. So 4 inches, guys. Cut that St. Augustine high. It'll be a lot happier.
It looks better. It looks so full and nice when you do it that way. And on top of that, it makes the plant healthier. You have a healthy root structure, strong root structure, because the longer blades are allowing it to gather more light. be more efficient gas exchange, the whole nine. So I really I don't get people who just scrape the top on it, make it look all bad.
Well, a lot of times that's the services that do that, and then we try to educate the services, and then the homeowner gets advice from the service and the people that spray their yard and their brother-in-law and the next
And they're
door
terrified
neighbor
of their
and the
HOA
lady with
finding them.
the HOA, and it's 9 times out of 10 not correct. So,
Well, the sad thing is, every guy that owns a pickup truck and is out of work takes his lawnmower and a trailer and goes into the lawn care business. He gets about 7 seconds of legitimate advice on how to operate things, and that's basically how to put gas in the mower. And very few mowers come where they'll actually mow it at 4 inches, and he's off. And people need to learn that there are so many people in the lawn care business that if the fellow that's cutting your lawn won't cut it at 4 inches, and you absolutely should go out and measure it, that you should find somebody else. Or if you're filthy rich, you can just spend $6,000 every other year and replace the lawn, which is what's going to happen if you keep cutting it short.
if you manage it incorrectly, it will die and you have to replace it. If you want to do that, that's great. If that's your goal, then you're meeting your goal. And boom, we're done. Everything's fine. So we have a question about any comments on having Massey garden people to take care of the lawn, and I'm afraid of HOAs. There's a lot of services out there. Some of them do a better job than others. Some of them are more educated. They go for more continuing training, and that's what University of Florida offers. We do a lot of their CEU teaching to keep their licenses in effect. So I really can't say which is a good company, which is a bad one. It depends on your area also. So a lot of these are big nationwide companies, and the people who run the one here may be great. The ones who run the exact same service under the same name in your part of Florida may not be as good. And HOAs, some of them are great. Some of them invite us in to speak to them. Some of them follow our recommendations, but some of them frighten me also. So they can be tough. And here's a quick one for Bernie. Can mimosa coexist with my wild Bermuda in the backyard?
Yes, that's not a problem. Wild Bermuda is not a tight growing grass, and the mimosa is not going to be a problem in that respect.
And here's another interesting one for you. Have you had any experience with, or are you familiar with the buffalo and Bahia hybrid grass?
No, I have not had any personal experience. I don't know anybody that has. There's several of these crosses and the new varieties that are showing up, but there doesn't seem to be much appetite to try them, and probably for good reason. It's one of those things that St. Augustine has a new variety that everybody is loving, and it's starting to have problems too. So none of these
I've got a phone call.
problem solved.
In one neighborhood, we convinced them to basically switch from St. Augustine to Bahia. They allow Bahia now, and then they heard about what was the new one? The Citra Blue.
Citra Blue.
And they say they developed Citra Blue, and it doesn't get take all root rot. And I had to tell them, oh yeah, I guess take all root rot. So there is no perfect grass out there, but I would think buffalo grass is grown much more out in the western part of the country. So if you cross buffalo with Bahia grass, it would do better in the areas in between the two, probably not so much Florida. And I know that there are new varieties of Bermuda they've developed and new varieties of zoysia. You don't want to grow zoysia.
You know, the thing about it is Bahia is a really nice grass, and it has a really great habit of growth here, but it has to be reseeded. Every one of the little blades in Bahia is an individual plant. If it dies, you lose a plant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's natural for the lawn to fade over a period of time. In nature, the plant puts up seed heads. The seed is not very good at germination, so you replace one or two that got lost, and you do that continuously, and it stays pretty decent. So you put it along a highway, you mow it a very limited number of times. It puts up seed heads, it reseeds, and it just keeps going. But you put it in a lawn, when you mow it, as soon as you mow it, it wants to pop up seed heads. It's a grass that, oh, if something's happened to me, let's get something going. And it puts up seed heads. And the seed heads look worse than the grass did before it was mowed. So they mow the seed heads down. Now you lose a few blades here, a few blades there. Then you got open space. As soon as there's an open space, the sun shines down and the little seed of a weed pops up.
The weeds will find it.
And the weeds take over. And it goes from a beautiful lawn to a really weedy mess in 3 or 4 years. But the trick is, if you're going to keep it mowed and you're not going to let it go to the seed heads, reseed every once in a while. The seed's expensive. The germination rate is terrible. So you go out and you buy $50 worth of seed. You spread it out over the whole lawn, and all it does is fill in the little holes, and nothing really changes. But the lawn doesn't deteriorate if you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a case of, if you remember this one fact, there is no lawn grass that wants to grow at our latitude. None. Never. No place on earth is there a lawn grass that wants to grow at our latitude. So you're forcing a plant to grow here that doesn't want to be here. And if $50 or $100 worth of grass seed a year is the cost to keep the Bahia going, that's pretty cheap in the overall scheme of things.
Mm-hmm. And that'll keep the weeds out, so you're not having to spray to kill the weeds after the fact.
And that's the trick. And it makes a beautiful lawn. There's absolutely nothing. And unfortunately, it's not going to look beautiful year round. You're only going to have 8 months of beautiful green grass, but you're only going to have 8 months of beautiful lawn, no matter what grass. And if you're up north, you only get 8 months of grass, but you don't notice it because in the winter it's covered with snow, and then who cares? And in the summer, it's so hot, you're miserable, you never look at the grass. So, but when you're in Florida, it's very, very important that you have a perfect lawn. None of this stuff existed until the 50s, when monoculture became the requirement for lawn. When most of us in my generation were kids, lawns were dandelions, clover, some grassy things that nobody could name, and a few other weeds, and you mowed it and it was green and everybody was happy. And the advertising convinced you that you needed to buy fertilizer, you needed to buy weed killer, you needed to buy something to kill the insects, you needed grass seed, and you needed a monoculture, you needed a special lawnmower, and everything else that went with it. And $150 billion later, we're back to the same thing. You cut it too short, and now take all root rot got it. So remember that. Grass should not be in Florida. People maybe if you treat the country nice.
Okay, guys, I think we need to wrap it up here. Let me mention Casey Ann, definitely go ahead, and if you want to try growing that grass, let us know how it works out for you. And Andrew Dave, once it warms up in the spring and you get to grafting, let us know how it works out for you. Feel free to send pictures. You can email it to me. Here is our phone number and contact information if you ever want to call on a Thursday and speak with Bernie, or come by the office and bring a sample in and meet him in person. Like to say to everybody, have a wonderful, happy, and safe holiday season. We will not be back here again next week. I think we're going to take the week off because I'm off. Colby, I think you have to work.
Yeah, I'm
Colby,
not.
if you want to do it on your own.
I think I'm catching up that week.
Okay.
Probably take a hiatus.
I'm taking the week off. I'm trying to recover.
Well, then we'll be back after the new year. We are coming back, aren't we?
Yes, we will be. So we
Okay.
will not be here next Thursday, but the Thursday after that, we will be here. And my goal for the coming year is to have at least one guest on each week. So I need to get on the stick about inviting people and getting them the link and getting them to click on and help us answer even more questions. You guys are great. We love all the great comments and everything else. And Bernie, I have one last burning question for you here, real quick. Bruce asks, how could he get the weed chart behind your desk or an equivalent? Because I'm looking at, I can see the Lesko weed chart hanging on the bulletin board behind your head.
You might try the guys from Site One, or you might just write to Lesko direct. That was a product they put out about a year ago. If you're interested in lawn weeds, there is a publication that the university puts out. Here is the Bible for lawn weeds.
And that book is out of print and impossible to find for less than $100 used on Amazon.
Really?
Yep. I cannot believe that either who wrote that has not updated it or nobody else has just written their own version.
Seems like a need.
I mean,
Yeah,
we
it
gave
does.
this to every master gardener that came along for years.
Oh, I know that I bought a whole bunch of copies of it to hand out to master gardeners have here at the office. And it went out of print at University of Florida, but we could buy it from University of Georgia. Now it's not in print anywhere except you can buy it used on Amazon. If we have extra copies around here, we could probably make a ton of money just selling them on Amazon.
I don't think we got any spares anymore. I gave away what few I had. But anyway, it's called Weeds of Southern Turf Grasses. And the nice thing about weeds is there's only 3 kinds of weeds. So pretty much the weed control is if you know that there's either broadleaf weeds, grassy weeds, or sedges, and the product A takes care of sedges, product B takes care of grassy weeds, and broadleafs or product C. You don't have to know that much. If you want the name of the specific weed, that's one thing. If you just want to know how to treat it, all you got to do is break it down to one of those 3 categories. And that's what that book does. It's spread out in 3 categories, and it's a great book. See if you can find one in a used bookstore. Try Better World Books and one of those kind of places.
Yeah, you can look online for a used copy and hopefully find it for a good price.
Weeds of Southern Turf Grasses.
I would imagine there's a PDF of that book out there somewhere.
There was, and I had a link, and I checked it a while back, and the link is dead now.
I'll send you an email. Okay. I got good at finding books.
Okay. Well, I didn't try looking or Googling it or trying to find another link or whatever. If you ever find a link, let me know.
Yeah.
That way, at least I can pull it up online and look through it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hey guys, I think we're gonna go. Boy, look at this. This is good time management. It's exactly 11 o'clock.
Look
So
at us
once
go.
again, we'd like to wish all of you and your families a very happy and merry and safe holiday season. Take care. Be safe. Come back in 2 weeks. We will be here at 10 a.m. on a Thursday to be able to answer all of your questions, take your comments. Thank you so much for being so active with the chat this week. It makes our life a lot easier and things go faster, except when you ask really hard questions. But I got Bernie here for that, so that's no problem. Ask the hard ones. I'll give them to Bernie. And other than that, hey guys, y'all take care. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, happy holidays.